Welcome to Scaling AI from Activity to Impact. I'm Yuval, and today with me is Shay Mandel. Shay is leading product at Next Insurance, and we've had an interesting chat about his work on getting an agentic development lifecycle up in the air. And I thought let's continue the chat over here so the listeners can benefit. Hi, Shay. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So, for people who aren't familiar with you or with Next, can you give a quick context of who you are, what you're doing, what's the context that you're working in?
Yeah. So I'm kind of throughout my career, I was always between the kind of on the boundary between engineering and product. And I'm a developer at heart, but I also like to see, big systems, how we impact customers, how we improve processes. So it's both from the engineering management side and on the product management side. I joined Next more than 7 years ago. We were quite a small company, but we grew like almost 100% every year in terms of revenue. And last year we were acquired. We are doing small business insurance. So think about like, I don't know, technician that comes to your house, he needs to have a general liability. And maybe if he has an employee, he needs to have workers' comp. We provide all these kind of coverages digitally. You can just go online and create a policy, no need for an agent. We can also work with agents, but that's like our kind of preferred way. And we grew very fast because it's a very big market and a lot of demand in the US. And doing it digitally is something that we're unique. Other companies do not provide it yet because it's a very sophisticated kind of line. Each profession is different and so on.
Any discount for Israeli podcast hosts that run small consulting businesses?
Yeah, I think we don't do any discounts. It's all
It's all
AI
best price.
and logic, and that is pricing it in the right way. We are trying to tailor the price very much to the exact need. And usually our policies are pretty priced very well.
Cool. Just as a side note, taking to myself to consider it for next year.
Yeah.
So how many people are building products or are in product and engineering at Next these days?
Overall, I think it's we are kind of separated the functions into a few functions. Engineering, obviously, product management, handling the kind of the user experience and different marketing channels and so on. And we have insurance product management. They own the development of the specific coverages, limits, all of that within the insurance. And for each specific business type, what needs to be the right coverage and so on. Overall, these three groups, around 200. Most of it is like about engineering is more than half, but then product, insurance product, and design altogether, it's about another half.
Okay, cool. Now, the separation between the business product manager or the business product manager and the technical product manager is a familiar one. I work quite a bit with a big futures exchange, and they have a similar situation where they have this interesting split. Cool. So maybe before we dive deeper, let's try something that I'm trying to introduce to the podcast. For the listener that's tuning into the conversation, what do you think, what would we hope is the impact that today's episode will have for them? What will they learn? What will they be able to do, maybe?
Yeah, so I think we won't get too technical, but I think we can talk about kind of, what's kind of a nice goal for a company that really wants to adopt the agentic development lifecycle. So some ideas over there and, what kind of a vision that we have. Some of the struggles getting there, a lot of learnings, a lot of things that, you need kind of caveats and just maybe even setting expectation of how long will it take. And then maybe I can talk a little bit about, how do we get and where we are now and how do we get there.
Okay, maybe we can also talk about the results. What are you seeing from a measurable perspective? What's the impact of this agentic lifecycle? Cool. All right, sounds good. So let's dive in. So when you look at, let's maybe talk about current state. What does the current state of development lifecycle look like for the majority of the organization? Let's say, or what are you
Yeah. So I can't say it's the majority for everyone yet. We try to focus first on, a few niches and make sure that we solve it over there. But it does affect most of the people. Currently, what we did, we kind of broke down the existing processes. We didn't change the processes much, but we said, in order to create good requirements, there are a set of steps you need to do, and we created a skill for each one of them. So, like describing the problem, then analyzing the problem, getting some data, maybe doing some user research, creating wireframes. All of these are things that you usually do. And then eventually you articulate everything in one PRD where you define the solution. So we broke down these into skills. Each one, it's a skill of its own. There is like an Uber skill that kind of helps you route. So it tells you, you say, I want to do this PRD. It can tell you, in which stage are you, and then it will direct you. And then it helps you. It's interactive, collects all the, it asks you like, okay, you want to define the problem, let's define it. How do you measure it? What do you expect the impact to be, and so on? And it kind of interviews you, and eventually it creates a section in the PRD which is describing the problem. And then it asks you, do you have data, or do you want me to get data to kind of give them more context, and do you want to set the goal, and so on. So that's on the kind of the product side. And then we have we know that usually we hand off to engineering, and then there are a lot of reviews and questions, and there is kind of a lot of feedback. We created a skill for that, so we call it PRD review by engineering. And this is a skill that goes and looks at everything, and it makes sure that, for every domain and so on, the requirements actually answer the questions or the details that we need, and provides feedback for the PM and also suggestions on how to fix it. And
so it preempts, in a sense, the actual engineering review, in the
yes,
hope that when the engineering looks at it, or when the engineering bots get it, there's less rework.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
So it tries to do this as much automatic as possible, but eventually after this stage, yes, it's ready for, let's say, engineering review and real by a human. We assume that there are humans in the loop. We want them still to look at it until we get the confidence. Yeah, and then it can take it to the next kind of phases, which is in engineering, doing the implementation plan, technical design, implementation, testing, review, all of this, all of skills that we have and supposed to be automated. And they are automated. Currently, we have this in most areas, most domains. We mapped all the domains. Each domain created their own context to explain and to make it a little bit more accurate and more also more efficient in how to do the review and the tech design and the implementation and the testing and everything. We are now in a stage that, we start running PRDs through this process, and we have the people in the engineering and also in products, they are not supposed to write anything on their own anymore. They just need to fix the skills or fix the context. So everything that is written will be written in a better quality. So we are doing this in maybe 3 squads right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is the mode of operations, but the others are also, they are adopting it pretty fast. They understand the values, they understand the efficiency. So almost all engineers are contributing to this, and also PMs are contributing.
How do the engineers feel about it? Do they do they find enjoyment in this new role that they have?
I think, it's an evolution. And I think as any time that you adopt something new, you see the same adoption curve, right? So there are the early adopters that jump on it and they really like it and they, move forward. There are the late adopters and there are the laggards, and it's the same in any population. I think most of them are now in the stage that they say, okay, I understand that I need to do this, and I also understand the benefit, and yeah, let's do it. So most of them are already in this state of mind, which is good. And so they are pretty happy about this. There is always some frustration where you write and you think everything is written well, and then eventually the result is the quality is not what you expect. Maybe sometimes not enough detail, sometimes too much detail, too long to read.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, tuning. I think it takes time to tune, but I think overall it's already saving us time.
But I think an important piece that I like that I want to emphasize in what you said was that people's role right now is, it's clear that the model is not going to be perfect. but you're trying not just to fix the model's outputs or even to avoid fixing the model's outputs, but instead fixing the system, the inputs into the model, whether that's the context or the skills, and then see that the model is able to create the right solution. So that's essentially everybody is developing this system that is the agentic development lifecycle, which is the right
Yeah.
mindset.
And we talked with all the engineers and also with product, and we explain everyone, you need to change the state of mind. This is how we said it. We need a new state of mind. We are now developers, not of the code. We are developers of the system. And yeah, and I think they are adopting this. So they
I
are
love it.
working on it. And
I love it. Okay. So where were we in the life cycle? There was
we defined all
coding
the
work,
skills.
right?
Yeah. We defined all the skills both on the product side and on the engineering side. We are tuning this. We are also having some teams that are starting what we call the loops, which is kind of the auto improvement loop. So we take a business problem and we say this is a problem that kind of repeats itself, and we want it to be continuously improving. So it should go from like monitoring what we have right now, deriving from that what's the new feature, and then going through all the features. There are humans in the loop, but this is like a process that should be like humans should mostly review, maybe tune, and push it to the next
So
step.
you're giving an agent essentially the agency to come up with features, features that will improve the system's behavior, the product behavior for the users.
Yeah. And today we look at it as feature suggestions, and there is a human that decides which of these are we actually going to pursue immediately. And yeah, and then we are moving forward.
And then the agentic lifecycle runs through it end to end and deploys and measure in real
and
world.
then creates a new list of suggested features based on the new.
Cool.
So that's the.
All right. So where would you say is currently the bottleneck for this? Like what's limiting your ability to create better products, more products, to penetrate new markets? Where is it currently?
I think that it's first of all there are a lot of details. Okay, it sounds very pretty and so on. Just getting one PRD to go through all these steps. Each step needs its own attention and tuning and so on. We are now in this process. We are looking ahead on doing this loop, so we are starting to do this. Again, a lot of details. How do you monitor? What do you monitor? When? Some things are, changing fast. Some things change through a long time, especially in insurance, for example. You introduce a new product, you start getting claims. Only after a year, you see if it's, too many claims, too little claims. Should we adjust something? So we are working on, tuning this, understanding exactly what we need. Still, wherever there is kind of, we still have a lot of we make sure that people are taking the decisions, not the agents. The agents are executing. They can suggest the next steps and so on, but humans are deciding on what is exactly the right.
So that's an interesting dilemma, because that could mean, at the extreme, I could say that how to code something is a decision. And if I want humans to make those decisions, then I'm back all the way to humans, at least reviewing all the code. Okay. There could also be a decision of what's important, like just choosing what's the feature, what's the architecture, what's the outcome that we want to see, the leading indicators, what's the system behavior that we want to see. So where do you think is the right altitude for the decisions moving forward?
Yeah. So I think when you execute, there are a lot of decisions to make, but we are trying to let the machine do this. But there are important kind of decision junctions that you need to. We still think there is a place for human judgment. So deciding on the priorities and selecting the features is one. Then most of the work on creating the PRD might be automatic, but eventually we expect a human to read this is what we want to do and approve this. That's on the product and the business side. Engineering, like creating the technical design and the plan, we let the agent do this, but we want a human review before he starts coding. So that's the intervention points. And then they can go and do all the development and improving the development, making sure all the tests, all of this can happen automatically. There will be a PR. We run an automatic PR review by an agent. And once he says it's done, like the review is okay after maybe multiple iterations of fixing stuff automatically, then we still want a human to look at it before it goes to production. Now, I'm talking about kind of important changes. Maybe in the future we can see this for small features, like the features I talked about are actually changes in our insurance product that are it's kind of making a mistake there can be very harmful, and it might take a long time to see the out. If we're talking about selecting a button color between one option on the other or the other,
Something in the user experience is less.
but it's not major. It's not like changing the overall experience. It's about like deciding if the button should be on the top or on the bottom or both sides and color this or that. And we can test it, and we'll usually test it through A/B test. Then it's okay for the agent to go all the way, create the two variants of the test, run this in production, and eventually come back with the result of the A/B test and say, this one is the one that is winning, and let's switch to it. Today, we still want to review it and say, okay, switch manually, but maybe in the future, we can push this automatically, because if it's very clear that one solution is better than the other, then we let it go. We're not there yet today. We need to build our own confidence in the system before we.
So at the moment, you are still reviewing the PRs, the code changes.
Yeah, we are not the initial reviewer. We are the last reviewer.
Yeah,
so
the last one.
Multiple.
So hopefully it's zero. You have zero feedback. That's the goal, right?
Yes.
And if you have feedback, then going back to your previous comment, the engineer should go in and change the guidelines, the context, whatever.
Yes.
So that, next time the reviewer or even the designer goes in and does the work better the first time.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you actually answered one of the questions I had for you, which is how much agency does the AI really have? And I think the example of you give it a KPI, essentially you give it an area and you say, improve this area, improve our ability to, I don't know, convert people that start to look for business insurance or something along those lines, is an example of we don't even give it features. We tell it to focus on outcomes. We really run a loop around a goal to improve an outcome. Any interesting insights that you've learned from trying to create these loops that you can share?
Yes, I think, we definitely go this way. For example, yes, we have a funnel, improve the conversion in the funnel. This is the metric, maybe, from start to quote or to purchase. And that's kind of common, everyone has a funnel and so on. Our funnel is unique in terms of like the questions we ask and so on, but he has ability to make these changes. I think this is based, like, not everyone can do it, but it's based on the fact that we formalized everything there. So the questionnaire and all of that is very formal, and we moved it to be almost no code in most of the areas. So it's fairly easy to change. And then when we run the loop, what we see is, it has a lot of ideas. Some of them are unrelated, or, it doesn't have all the kind of the experience that our subject matter experts have. And in some cases, it's like different things that are hard to do. So some of the changes in insurance product, you need to file, you need to get approval from the state, the Department of Insurance, and so on. So it's not easy to just make a change. In some cases, it does, and in some cases, it can tell all the competitors are doing X, you should do it the same. And we say, okay, but we are digital and they are not, and we don't want to be the same. Okay, we still want to be differentiated in some sense. So So these are all things that, we can get a lot of recommendations for features, but we definitely see that, we still need the human eye to take a look and to make the right decisions.
And there's still a lot of context to teach it, it seems.
Yes, but I think when we try to teach, like, you can teach the context. We try to build the context of, like, this is our strategy, these are our whatever marketing channels, and kind of give him I kind of try to look at it as a junior, let's say PM, when it creates the PRD. And whatever training I'm taking the PMs through, the human PM, through understanding what's the company, what's the goals, to write this in some way in a kind of a context file or background, and we have multiple files of this nature. There is still stuff that we need to. There is like some of it when we understand. Okay, if we just knew this, then we add it to the context, right? And we say, okay, this is our strategy, and it's going against our strategy. Okay, let's articulate this in the strategy MD file.
I mean,
I'm optimistic.
one thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if it if it makes sense, is like a junior PM is probably not gonna be an insurance expert. But if you think about the most senior insurance expert that you have on staff, have you tried systemizing their knowledge, making a digital twin for them that is available for the agents? And another similar idea is, like, let's take the ideas from the world's best growth hackers, like the world's best books and resources on growth hacking, and bring them into what this growth hacker agent knows.
Yes. So first of all, yes, we are taking, as I said, like the state of mind is that everyone should improve the brain that we have in the company. So yes, the best insurance experts, they are helping us write this brain. And yeah, and we are also looking at, asking Claude, like, how would you solve this? And let's build this into the brain. And yes, we also, what we did is we created these agents that enable you to ask different functions in the company. So you can have ask insurance expert and ask engineer. So if I'm a product manager and I want to do a new feature, but I'm not sure what types of whatever different statuses we have in the system for this user behavior, I can just say, I want to ask engineering, what are these statuses? And it will look in the code and everything and all the context that we have, and will bring me back the answer. So instead of me talking with an engineer face to face, which is a big problem in our company because we are in very different time zones, we said we need to solve this somehow. So I can just ask a question. So maybe this is background for me to understand before even I start talking about like what's the problem and what's the solution I need. I just maybe exploration and so on. I can do this. And the same goes for engineer, for example, when he has a dilemma, like he sees the PRD, everything is done. It went through all the reviews, but still when he goes to implement, there is some question. And he says, what will the PM do? If the PM would sit the next table in the same time zone, that would be nice to just, ask him. But since this is not the case, he can ask the bot, and the bot will give him, what the PM said, like, this is how I make decisions usually if I have like specific guideline and thing. So this is what we are in the process of building this. And
I assume that the agents themselves will have access to this as well. So this growth hacker agent will have access to the insurance expert when they have an idea. Then they assume, can we even do this? They will go out and ask the insurance expert.
Yes, of course. It all sits on top of the same brain. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So maybe changing gears a bit. One last topic is, how has all of this changed how you manage the work? Like how you plan, how you execute, what does the day-to-day work management look like? Where is all of this managed? How is all of this managed?
So I think on purpose, we didn't say, let's jump to the end and let's change everything, all the processes and everything. We are open-minded and saying, if these things change, what can we improve, what way can we solve, like, and save like steps in the process and so on. But and there was some thinking about like, okay, let's give the PM the ability to push features to production. And we said, okay, we'll get there someday. But for now, because we want to tune each part of the process to make sure that we get confidence and it's tuned and it's doing well, we are not changing the kind of the roles and all the talk about like, overlapping roles and so on. We said on
Okay, so there are
purpose,
still
let's
product
say,
roles, engineering roles. There's still the end-to-end life cycle of a feature, let's say, that we talked about. But
we keep this the
in
same.
classic engineering product relationship, there's releases, planning releases, roadmap, planning sprints, those kind of things. Do you do any of that these days?
So yes, so far maybe we're a little bit traditional. We know that we know that someday we may want to change this, but for now we continue with the same processes until we see that we can really either expedite them really a lot or completely remove them. But for now, we just I think what we did is we didn't change the process. We still have a quarterly planning and we have sprint planning and we have roadmaps and a list of features that we want to deliver in a quarter. I think two things that we changed is one is we have more, we think we have more capacity.
Mm.
We believe we have more capacity and we can do things, let's say, faster. And this can be in two kind of ways. One is do more. So if we want to tune, let's say, whatever, X professions in a quarter, now we can say maybe we can do them the same X in a month or something like that. And the goal is to get to this to be in a loop and to be completely automatic. But right now we see that, since we are also optimizing the system as we go and so on, it takes the time. It's still, we do see success already that we can do some of these very much faster in a big way. So that's one way, accelerating, like doing more of the same. And the second is doing higher quality in the same time. So instead of doing, okay, that's the MVP, that's phase one, let's make it as simple as possible. We can in some cases say, okay, we can dream bigger. We can do maybe changes that are a little bit bigger. We still go with the phase one, phase two, MVP and so on, but maybe the phase one is a bit, it's a bit bigger, or it's a bigger change. It's something that is more bold that we can move forward.
Okay. Are you still, like, I'm guessing in days past, you manage things like stories, whether it's in Jira, Azure DevOps, Lina, or whatever. Are you still managing these sort of things, or is it mostly the feature at this point and the stories are just flowing?
Yeah. So with all these flows, there is a big question about like where do you store the kind of the data of the process and the current status and all of that. We do use Jira and Confluence for that. And yes, Jira lists the tasks. So if I create a implementation plan, eventually it will create tickets. And the goal is that the agent will take the tickets and will do them. But if they have comments and so on, we found this as at least for now, as a good place to write whatever they do. So if they work in the asynchronously in the background, they can still write the output as comments on the Jira and say, okay, I did this. This is what I'm planning to do. This is what I've done. This is how I reviewed it and so on. And then you can have, you can track it and you can see what happened. And it also enables the agents, the different agents to take a look and to read the context and to understand where we are. So yeah, we still use Jira.
So as leaders of this process, what's the dashboard that you look at to see what features are flowing where in this life cycle?
So we think we need to build this kind of dashboard. Right now we look at the epic levels and we see the completion of the epics. We are starting to think about like, okay, how do I see this, everything that is going on, and assuming that much more will go on, what's the right way to visualize this and to understand what projects we're working on, in which stage they are, and so on.
One of the things that I've seen for many years, and I think it applies well here as well, is an epic level Kanban board. So, and first of all, an epic level statuses that reflect well all of the touch points between agents and humans. So all of the If you think about the PRD, the agent finished writing a PRD, it's now waiting for human review. That's a distinct state change, right? So all of these state changes, especially when it's a handoff between humans and agents, show them separately and then use a Kanban board to reflect where things are, where things are waiting for the humans. I think that might be useful out of the box. Like it's so easy to create dashboards these days, but since you're already sitting on top of Jira, which I think makes sense, I think it's something worthwhile doing. And then you also get the benefit of flow metrics that show you telemetry of how long it takes you in each one of these steps, and you can start to calculate flow efficiency and how much time things are really waiting.
Yeah. So we started this. We have a like initial dashboard for understanding the status of each epic. But yeah, everything you said, it's good ideas.
Cool. Awesome. So what maybe are one or two things to avoid for leaders that are starting this journey, and one or two things to make sure that they do?
Yeah. So I think it's been a journey. We're in this for maybe 3 or 4 months. It's moving very quickly. People expect it to move very quickly. I think the management, especially, with all the hype and everything, they are expecting it to move very, very quick. And I think in the reality, from ID to POC, like always, it's very quick. From ID to production level, write this in a way that will pass all the reviews and so on, takes time. I think the first thing to do is to set expectations and to give the demo, but also say, it will take time until we get to this level, and to be it will be whatever. We talk about it kind of as grades. So we say, the initial version will probably be 60% accurate or 70, and we'll probably get to 90% or 95%. And the extra 5% is why we need a human in the loop, because we think, as we know, the last percentages are always the hardest to fine tune. So we set expectations this way. We did a lot of training in terms of the mindset we talked about, explaining. First, before even we talked with the engineers about this, we defined a little bit the process, like how do we want to do this? Where is all this information stored? Is it a repository? Is it a wiki? And so on. So there were quite a few decisions there. We decided to go with a repo. So we'll have the version control and we have everything in one place, and people can contribute, but people can also review and so on. So GitHub provides us a lot of mechanism to do that. So I think you should, first of all, set the expectations, then define the processes, and then train. And I think people understand that they want to jump on it. So let them do it. And we said, kind of consciously, that okay, let people run, let them understand also the problems, the challenges and so on, but they will be part of the process and they can also contribute back. So we said, we have a weekly meeting where we collect the learnings and we understand what people are doing in different places, and we are trying to consolidate this and to cross-pollinate across the organization. So I think this is a kind of a good practice. And I think the some kind of learning, I don't know if it's stop doing, start doing, whatever, but it's be kind of conscious to the fact that you have different users with different levels of technical ability, let's call it. So for the engineers, there is no issue to install many different things and play with them and try and so on. For product managers and insurance experts, they live in a different place. When you tell them open a terminal and just write these commands, you lost them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you are trying to let them do it on their own and so on. So we really wanted to make this, and part of it, Claude can do for you. In some cases, at least with us, there are different set of permissions for each user. So engineers usually can do some admin or root access on their machines, and the others don't, and it makes sense. We just need to make sure that the skills that we write work for everyone, and the expectation is set in the right way, and create very clear kind of getting started guides that are maybe in some cases different for the different audience, or with some different kind of levels of the guide. So yeah, and this is
one of the things I've seen in other organizations that I work with and talk to is there's this pattern that I see that the harness is created by engineering, a spec-driven harness that is very engineering oriented, you might say, both in what it focuses on and what it doesn't focus on, but also how it's structured. And you see when you give it to anybody that's not an engineer, or even not everybody that's not the engineer that wrote it, and people don't really know what to do with it. They don't even understand what's the benefit of it. So you need to think from a product perspective, even about your AI harness and your AI capabilities. You need to make sure that it's something that people are easy to activate and easy to retain, and on in all these aspects, especially when we start to move beyond engineering.
Yes. And what I talked with other companies and so on, what I saw and what I was kind of worried about is some companies, they have a lot of skills because everyone builds its own skill. They don't use the generic skill. And then when you look at the statistics, every skill is used by maybe one or two users. And then, a lot of what you build and all these brains, they are not really utilized. So I'm very focused on not getting there and trying to let everyone use the same thing. The way we are doing this is kind of, you can call it like, eating our own dog food. We are working with so we have a squad that I lead for the AI, what we call AI enablement. So we build kind of the infrastructure and the guidelines and the methodologies and so on. And there are business squads that are using this. And we have one of our people over there to make sure that we build the right infrastructure for them, and also that they utilize it, and as well
So you have
that
the
they
forward
can
deployed
contribute.
engineer.
Yes, and also part of as I said before, part of their definition of work for this squad is not to deliver the feature; it's to build the system that can deliver more features in the future. So, and they also shifted some of their OKRs with approval of management and so on, that okay, it's okay that the first quarter will be slower because we understand it will accelerate the next quarter, and this quarter is the focus on building the machine. And I think this is very important, and we are also making sure that they don't build the machine, like you said, just for their squad. No, it should be a machine that is built in a way that can be extendable by our teams and also be used by other squads. So yeah, there is a lot of investment in that, but I think it's important because I don't want it to be that every squad, every engineer has their own way of work. I think it's won't be productive, and I think it will be very hard to maintain.
So let's assume product, insurance products, engineering, operations is all agentic, with the humans spending most of their time applying taste and judgment and key decision junctions and optimizing this system. If you look at the rest of the organization, what's your vision? What's the organization's vision for what being AI first, AI native means beyond this building and improving the products, the insurance products? And
Yeah, so I think eventually, it should be in all areas, and it can contribute in every place. And I think there is basically they can just use Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, the vanilla version. What's the added value that we have as a company to provide, let's say, to the finance team? And I think we do have it, because once we build this, then the connectivity between the pieces and the ability to keep the organizational context can contribute a lot. So, for example, we didn't talk about the actuaries, but the actuaries also, they are part of the company. They are more sophisticated business people, but still, we can build them tools and we can help them do this in a more efficient way. So the connectors that we have to the data that we use now to, let's say, define the hypothesis and how much we will improve in the funnel, they can use the same thing in order to look at the claims and connect it to the funnel and see, how much of these questions that they want to ask the customer, how much they influence the overall conversion, and will it be beneficial or not. So everything, this is definitely connected. We also provide them more tools to look at what competitors are doing, because the product needs to see it and the insurance product needs to see it, and also the actuary probably needs to borrow ideas from what others in the industry are doing. They are doing it today. They have ways to do it, by looking at other websites and different places and things. we can automate this, and this can be beneficial for everyone. And all the way to, let's say, we talked about finance. Finance can collect these, funnel metrics and say, okay, based on that, I can say, what's my prediction for the budget for next year, for example. How much can we improve the funnel? And based on this, how much can we improve the top line and the bottom line and so on. So it should go almost every place. I hope every place, even the people team can probably, learn from it, like HR, and use some tools that we can connect and automate some of their work. They also have a lot of operation to do.
I mean, one of the interesting opportunities, I think, is we look at the product and engineering like a factory, right? Like a pipeline. And we understand that there's a value stream, there's a flow, there's a set of stages. We create skills for each one of the stages, and we work on optimizing this system, with the intent that it becomes more and more agentic. I guess the question is, what other factory lines are material to Next Insurance business? Like, I don't know, claims processing, is that a major one that takes a lot of people, a lot of energy, hiring sometimes? I don't know, closing the books each month, whatever it is, and applying the same concept that you talked about for the product and engineering, applying in that space is an interesting opportunity. I guess maybe it's a topic for another time, but the mindset that you need, that engineering mindset of we're constantly tuning the process, is a mindset that's somewhat more difficult to find in other business processes, in my experience. So applying AI outside of engineering requires bringing an engineering mindset to the rest of the organization, whether it's by applying engineering capacity to it or by, building engineering skills or mindset elsewhere.
Yeah. And we're doing both. We talked mostly about the agentic, the development lifecycle. We already implemented this like in the support and the claims and so on. And like the customer facing, we did this already, a year ago that we implemented AI over there, and we continue to improve. And yes, we have product managers that we deploy there and a team that supports these different teams, and they are applying the engineering mindset, and they are always thinking about how to improve that.
So you're saying, in a sense, the product and engineering is actually behind some of the rest of the organization when it comes to
Yes.
leveraging agentic. Makes sense in this case. Cool. Awesome. This is all fascinating, Shay. I think we've achieved our intended impact or outcome for this episode. I think our listeners have a lot of interesting ideas to reflect on how does an agentic lifecycle look like in practice? What are some things to pay attention to? What are some things to avoid? If anybody wants to connect, see what you're doing over at the Next Insurance, is there a place you would like to invite people to take a look at?
Yeah. So first of all, we have a meetup that we are kind of opening to the industry. It's local in the Bay Area, but it's also on Zoom, so everyone in the relevant time zone can join us. It's on Luma, so luma.com/productleaders.ai, and everybody can join
Cool.
this. And yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to post there from time to time. And also feel free to to just connect with me on LinkedIn and ask questions. I'm always happy to chat and to learn. And I think this is all new for everyone in the world, and we are all learning from each other. So it's great to chat and to understand and to learn from each other.
Awesome. So thank you for being here and sharing, Shay. It's been fascinating for me, at least. See you on the next episode of Scaling AI from Activity to Impact.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye bye.